One last programming note, we're going to have an extra show this week. That's where we're going to be covering Churchill Downs for Saturday Stakes. And also we're going to have coverage of Monmouth Park. And there, excuse me, not Monmouth Park. Nah, Monmouth Park at the Meadowlands. See, it gets confusing these days. We've got Belmont at Aqueduct. We've got Monmouth Park at the Meadowlands. Anyway, we've got a 6-race turf card on Saturday. Monmouth at the Meadowlands, sponsored by BetMakers. That segment we'll be covering that also. It's going to be an audio-only show. So if you're listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, you should be subscribed to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. In the Money Media, that's the name of the feed. You can get the audio-only version of the show that's going to cover Churchill and Monmouth over there. And of course, for more, check out inthemoneypodcast.com. Hello and welcome to the In the Money Players podcast. This is our late week show. We're going to be dropping it on Friday, September 23rd. And we're going to be dropping this a little bit early this week because we're going to be covering some racing Friday night. And that is where we're going to start the show. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatale, back with you in the Brooklyn Bunker. Once again, happy to be joined by two guests. We'll start with the man that I like to describe as the usual co-host of this program. He was on with us a bunch of times during Saratoga. I have a feeling we're going to be seeing a lot more of him in the run-up to the Breeders' Cup. He is Jonathan Kinchin. JK, what's up?
PTF, it's been a whirlwind. I left the day after the Saratoga meet to go to Europe for a friend's wedding in Greece and to do some wedding planning of my own. And then I got back. I flew to Austin. I've been with Austin for 5 days. I just got back to Saratoga, and I finally feel like the meet is over officially for me. It took a while to let down, but here we are.
That's funny. I had a similar reaction really to the end of Saratoga, where end of Saratoga went to Nashville, went to Toronto, and it only just now feels this week like the fall is officially beginning and all the interesting wagering opportunities. And to talk about one of those interesting wagering opportunities that we've got going Friday night, we've got a man who's done a fantastic job on his own podcast on this network, the First Over podcast. And he's here to educate us. And I'm really include myself in that as somebody who's always been really interested in harness racing, very aware of the fact that a lot of the old school horse players, thoroughbred players came from that world. Trip handicapping, really a concept that largely originated, as far as I understand it, from the sport of harness racing. And this is a guy who's done some serious demystifying on these airwaves over the course of the last year or so. We welcome now to the flagship show, Edison Hatter. Edison, how are things?
Pete, thank you so much. Pleasure to be on. Looking forward to discussing this Friday evening Hoosier card. And, it was a pleasure last year on opening day to be with you and JK at Saratoga. And I can't believe I didn't get up there this year. Just got so busy with stuff this summer and jealous listening to you two. I know who were up there quite a bit this summer. So
we'll get you back. We'll get you back. We'll get you doing. We'll do the doubleheader up there. We'll do the old degenerate doubleheader. We'll spend all day at the flat and then end up over at the harness. But on this segment, I want to get you going. Let's start from like the very beginning. Tell me like I'm 5. What's going on at Hoosier on Friday night?
Well, Friday night, for them is one of their biggest nights of the year. They have a Dan Patch night back in August, so that's one of their major stakes as well. And this is the other major stake held at Hoosier Park, which is the Caesars Trotting Classic. It is one of the major trot races in the sport. But it's anchored by several other races on the card as well, including the Hoosier Park Pacing Derby. That'll be the major race for the Pacers. And then there's a lot of other stakes races underneath, all of which we discussed on the roundtable that came out Wednesday evening. And that will include some of our other sports' biggest stars. And there's also a lot of Kentuckiana Stallion series. That includes the 2-year-olds. They're going for nearly $250,000 in those races. And obviously the 2-year-olds, especially in harness racing, at this point, we're starting to get a pretty good idea of where they're at in the season because, unlike the thoroughbreds, since these horses race every week, you have 2-year-olds that might already have 10 or maybe 15 starts under their belt. And obviously, I don't think it's any thoroughbred 2-year-old with that many starts yet. So it definitely gets you an interesting spot to understand where some of these freshman horses are. And of course, again, we'll look forward to seeing a lot of the older stars as well on the card later on that we'll discuss too.
I'm feeling horse player envy there, JK, when Edison talks about having that much form to look at with these 2-year-olds. Doesn't that sound cool?
Yeah, I mean, it makes it a lot easier than some of the races we had to deal with. I can think of a specific race last week where a horse had run one time and didn't run particularly well the second time. So you only have one start to go off of. Edison, when I first got into racing, and I got my first ADW living in Texas, and I remember my dad would go to bed with I'd go to bed with my dad having $100 in his account, and then the next morning he'd have zero, and I'd say, Dad, there was no races on. He said, yes, there was, and he lost it all on harness racing. Those pools on those Wednesday nights and those random Tuesday nights don't seem to be very huge compared to what we see sometimes in thoroughbred. How does this pools we're looking at for this big event, how big do these pools project to get?
JK, to answer quite frankly to you, there are some harness tracks, much like some of the late, night thoroughbred track kind of in the random places in the world, that the pools might not be the greatest. But when you look at a place like Woodbine Mohawk Park, obviously we do show for here in the money, as well as the Meadowlands, which we've also done work for, and now Harrah's Hoosier Park. Those are three of the premier harness tracks in North America. And quite honestly, when I started the Meadowlands, even my thought was I wasn't sure exactly where the pools were compared to, thoroughbred. I mean, I'm still a huge thoroughbred fan. I still own thoroughbreds, so I love that side of sport as well. But at the Meadowlands, quite honestly, most weekends we're handling on par, if not bigger than, say, a Charlestown. And likewise, a Hoosier on a night like this should expect to have a pretty large handle as well with the races they have on this card. And they do very well each and every night. So, it's not going to rise to the level of, say, a Kentucky Derby, handle by any stretch, but you are competing for sure with some of those, medium-sized thoroughbred tracks when it comes to handle. And obviously, I think playing flat bettors have no problem betting into those size of pools, and you'll be looking at similar type things here on this Friday evening.
There's a guaranteed pool or two on Friday night, Edison. And I remember we were talking off air. You said you wouldn't be surprised at all if they greatly exceed the numbers of the guarantee.
Yeah, they have a $20,000 guaranteed pick four pool, races 12 through 15, and those are three of the four biggest races on that card. There is races 12, 13, and 14. And those were tickets that we gave out as well on the roundtable Wednesday evening. We all gave out the pick four tickets. And that for sure is a sequence. If there are flat players looking to get involved with the sequence, those are definitely the three races you'll want to watch if you're interested by the sport, the most interesting races. And I think there are also going to be some of the more interesting ones to bet as well, quite possibly.
When does the card kick off? And give us some details on some of the stars, because I know this is a star-laden card. Some of the equine stars that our viewers and listeners should be on the lookout for Friday night.
Well, the first race will be at 6:15 p.m. And, the great thing about Hoosier Park is, especially if you're looking at their past performances, is they actually are one of the only tracks that I know of in the bottom right-hand corner. They actually list their true off time. So, you don't have to worry too much about dragger, this, that, the other. So it's listed right here. Race one will be off at 6:19 p.m. So we know that for a fact. And I'll just kind of highlight some of the other stars throughout the evening. We'll see. One thing that I think is great about harness racing is that a lot of our stars, will kind of travel around to these different tracks. And I think the owners do a great job of this. In fact, one that I'd like to mention by name is Don Tiger, who owns Charlie May, who's one of the pacing stars in our sport. And, this is a horse that was eligible to a lot of big races. He could go to some opens at tracks this weekend for, $50,000, $60,000 purses. And instead, he ended up yesterday in Delaware, Ohio at the Delaware County Fair, which is home of the Little Brown Jug, one of the big races in the sport. And he ended up in an Ohio Stallion Series race that went for $18,000. And, he crushed the field. So it clearly wasn't the most money he could get, but it was clearly important to Don that, he did a great interview on the set. He's tremendous with his time. And he, for sure found it important to take Charlie May to this track to, let the public see his star horse. Now, I think that's one of the great things about harness racing. And I think we see as well quite a bit that, our horses stick around a lot longer than the thoroughbreds as well, which I think is kind of an opportunity to connect to and, be a fan of these horses longer than some of thoroughbreds are before they end up in the breeding shed. And I think we see that on this card starting right away, Pete, with races 5 and 7. The Phil Langley Memorial Race 5, which is going to go off about 7:43. That includes Cool Papa Bell. It's a short select field of 5. I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting betting race, but the highlight of that race will be the 5 Cool Papa Bell, who was this year's upset 52-1 winner of the Hambletonian, which again is our equivalency of the Kentucky Derby. And similarly, race 7, the Moneymaker, will be going off about 8:25 p.m. That will include Fashion Schooner, who was the Hambletonian Oaks winner this year. So, I mean, Pete, we discussed this a little bit before we were on air, but it's a unique aspect in that, you basically have the equivalency of the Derby winner and the Oaks winner on the same card. So it's definitely something special to look forward to Friday evening. And that's just on the undercard. We're not even in the big races yet.
It's pretty cool. We've been reading in the ads that we've been doing in the lead up to this night, talking about Bulldog Hanover and his return to the races, the winner of that Dan Patch Stakes you mentioned before, but also a horse that stopped the clock in some pretty impressive time.
Yeah, so again, for those interested in that pick 4 sequence, it starts in race 12 about 10:10 p.m. And again, obviously the round table, we go into all of these races in depth, but race 13 is where we'll see Bulldog Hanover. That one will go off about 10:31. And so Bulldog Hanover may be the standard pred that the most fans outside of the sport may know right now, because he went 1:45.4 for the mile back in July up at the Meadowlands, and that is a world record time. Obviously, having working at the Meadowlands, for me, being in that winner's circle when he came back was just still getting chills right now thinking about it. That was absolutely one of the coolest things ever. I mean, to see that horse do that. And it's not only that, he's just been incredible since then. Pete, it's funny, actually, last August when we started this show for First Over and supporting Woodbine Mohawk, he was the first horse we ever discussed on the show in a featured race. He was in the featured race last August for Sire Stakes up at Woodbine Mohawk. And at the time, he was a good horse, but not sure if anyone expected him to get to this level. But he finished off last year with 10 wins from 15 starts. He made nearly $600,000. And all of a sudden this year, he's won 10 times from 11 starts. And with a significant check in this race, he could pass $1 million in earnings already in September. And, we still have a good 5, 6, 7 weeks of the season left leading up to, of course, the Breeders' Crown, our equivalency of the Breeders' Cup. So, there's a lot to look forward to for the rest of his season. And for sure, he's the one to knock off in this pacing derby. He's probably a single in pretty much every pick 4 ticket out there. So, that's, I guess, the difficulty, though, with this race is that he's going to be the flight line 1 to 9 in this race. Either, I guess, single him on top or toss him entirely. It's one or the other.
When you're talking about a horse that's so associated with the pod, JK, made me think of Divisadero on our show. Maybe Divisadero didn't rise to these type of heights, but it is fun when you do these shows. There's certain horses you just develop a relationship with over time.
No, I get it. And I was going to ask Edison who I could single. Everyone knows I love a nice little single, but he already answered that question for me. So I'll have to tune into the round table to pick up the other ones.
Yeah. Are there any other specific tips you want to give out, Edison, here before we get on with the show?
Yeah, we'll just chat the big one real quick. The namesake race here for the evening is the Caesars Trotting Classic. That's race 14. And, it's interesting. It's a trot race where there's none from the Aki's Fonstead barn. Aki's Fonstead, of course, very well known for his training abilities with the trotters. And in fact, the last time I was on the show, Pete, we discussed a race on Hamiltonian Day where he had 5 of the 8 trotters in the big trot race, one of the bigger trotting races of the day at the Meadowlands. He has none in here, so it makes it very interesting. But, going back to what I said about, being able to follow these harness horses for a while, this is a great example of it that we see in this race. The 10 horse Bella Bellini, who will be my top choice, that's last year's Hamiltonian Oaks winner, much like, equivalency of the Kentucky Oaks. Last 2019 Hamiltonian winner, Forbidden Trades in this field. So, again, when you compare to thoroughbreds where some winners from 3 or 4 years ago in the Derby may not be around, this is a horse that's still racing week in and week out. And the 7 Jujubee was last year's Breeders' Crown winner, equivalency, of course, of our Breeders' Cup. So we have stars across several years in this trotting classic. But the one I'll go to is the 10 Bella Bellini. She's 6 for 13 this year. She's been very, very good lately. And, she's had a couple rough patches with some trips in the most recent starts. And, she's going to have to work out a trip from that outside post 10 here tonight. But I think the price is going to be right. I think she might be a second or maybe even a third choice behind a horse like Quattro d'Olio and Jujubee. So hopefully we can get her at like a 4 or 5 to 1 kind of price, and maybe use Jujubee maybe underneath, maybe those two in a little bit of an exacta, and maybe try to get around the most likely favorite Quattro d'Olio from the rail. But that for sure is the major race of the night, and I think it's also going to be a great betting board by the end of the race as well.
Folks looking for much more should check out the roundtable. You'll find it in the First Over feed. You'll find it in the Money Media, what we call the Black feed, the House feed, and check that out. You'll get the detailed selections from an all-star cast of analysts. Edison does a fantastic job over there. We appreciate you taking some time out today. And JK, you famously said you're interested in if there's horses running in a circle, you're interested in wagering. We're ready to expand your horizons now into the harness landscape.
Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready to rock.
Good stuff, boys. We'll see you soon. Today's show brought to you by our friends at the Caesars Trotting Classic. Guests can enjoy the best the sport has to offer on Friday, September 23rd, with an estimated $1.4 million in purses and Grand Circuit action on the card, highlighted by the 5th edition of the $200,000 Caesars Trotting Classic. Witness the world's fastest standardbred as Bulldog Hanover makes his highly anticipated return to Harrah's Hoosier Park for the first time since the Dan Patch Stakes victory in the $175,000 Harrah's Hoosier Park Pacing Derby. In addition to the Grand Circuit action, guests can enjoy handicapping contests, cash giveaways, food trucks, family fun entertainment, and more as part of Harrah's Hoosiers Park's community night at the races during the Caesars Trotting Classic card. For more information, go to inthemoneypodcast.com/. Next up on the show, very happy to welcome in a frequent guest. You've seen him on our Final Answer shows. You've seen him come by from time to time talking about his role in Taylormade partnerships, specifically medallion racing. He is Philip Shelton. Philip, what's going on?
Thanks, Pete. You saved me from the September sale for the last couple days, so I appreciate you getting me out of there into the office.
It's been a busy September sale for our friends at Taylormade. Tell us some of the highlights.
Yeah, so I think, we are likely to be leading consignor for the whole sale. The sale's been very strong, which I think just is kind of built on, the last couple of years have been very strong, which is just encouraging, for people that are involved in the business. I'm a fan first. So I just want the business to continue. It's something I've grown up loving. So I think when you see this strength really at every level, it's really strong. Our yearling partnership was lucky enough to purchase 5 yearling fillies. So we have a Constitution, who's obviously, top sire. We got a Medaglia d'Oro, Cairo Prince, a Liam's Map, and a Twirling Candy. So we're really excited. They're back at the farm now, get a couple weeks easy before they head to Ocala. So we're really looking forward to that. And just from a Taylormade perspective, I think we'll end up likely being leading consignor, and it just gives you a lot of momentum kind of heading into the last couple months of the racing season, into the Breeders' Cup, and then on to the November sale from there. So
great stuff. I recently did that chat with Alan from Taylormade Partnerships. If folks want to learn more, I recommend checking that out. You can find it on our YouTube channel, on our social media. You can also go to the TaylormadePartnerships.com website, where you can find information about the bloodstock investment side and about the medallion racing side, including, I would imagine, Philip, the yearling partnership. I'm not sure if the window will open in that, but if folks want to learn more, I imagine that's the place to go.
Yeah, it's still open. Anybody that's interested, we can send you the info on the horses that we purchased so far. We'll probably also look at the October sale. We kind of have some pedigree requirements. So as we get into the last couple books of the Keeneland September sale, a lot of those horses, not that they can't be good racehorses, but they just don't meet our kind of, when you're buying 6 to 8, you can be really selective on what you want. And hopefully you can find a spot in the market. When you're going to buy 10 to 12, you can kind of be whatever. But for us, we felt like, hey, we have this really narrow bullseye. So we're immediately throwing out a bunch of the horses that could be good racehorses, but they just don't fit what we're trying to do. But we're really happy with the 5 we bought so far, and we'll probably look at the October sale as well.
It is one of the things I really like about what you guys do in your approach to partnership. I mean, there's a very well thought out business model. We talked about it with Alan. You can see it there on the site if you want to learn more. But you're here today, my friend, to talk about a pair of Grade 1 races at Parx on Saturday. We're going to have a lot more on the card on the plus side for folks who want to learn more about that in themoneypodcast.com/plus. But wanted to have you in to talk about these 2 Grade 1 races that we've got cooking on Saturday. We'll start off talking about the Cotillion, which is both of these races came up really interesting. This one, though, is where we will begin. Philip, what do you think of this? What do you think of this race? We're going 1 mile and a 16th for these 3-year-old fillies on the Parx dirt.
And just to even extrapolate out, the whole card is great. Like, I kind of dug into these 2 races first, and I was like, I'll peel back, look at some multis and stuff. I mean, you look, even like the first race has 17 horses entered. So, I mean, it's just a great card up and down. I really kind of want to play against Secret Oath. I've been on here a couple of times and said, hey, in the CCA Oaks, I was picked Secret Oath over Nest. And last time I was like, I learned my lesson. She's danced a lot of dances. And from a figure standpoint, at this point in the year, she's just not a lot faster than everybody else. And you're likely to get a very short price. To me, I landed on Shahama. I thought coming over, they were pretty high on her going into the Oaks. She didn't run that bad. She ran sixth, and that was a huge ask to come over from Dubai, settle in here, run. I thought her race in the Mother Goose was pretty good. And then I thought last time she was just miles the best. I think she's got good speed to sit close. She's drawn pretty well to the outside. I think there's potential more upside with her. And that's kind of where I landed.
I could see it, and I want her on my tickets. I've been very impressed with her as a physical specimen as well. I like the way she moves. I ultimately did not pick her. I would certainly have her as at least a backup in this spot. But Adair Manor is a horse I want to talk to you about. I mean, she ran some really fast races this spring, never looking like she'd gotten everything her own way either. I like the fact that she could probably lead. I think she could probably also sit and pounce with the ladder tactics being what you might want in this race. And then she was very wide, remember, on that Black-Eyed Susan Day course where it certainly felt like ground loss mattered. And I like the looks of these workouts since. I haven't seen a clocker report or anything, but just steady and fast. And I think she might be a battle-tested runner. And when you bake in some figure improvement for this 3-year-old filly for the time she's been away, I think she could be as fast as any of them. I would like to think maybe with Secret Oath and some of these others in there, you could get something on the order of 7-2 or 3-1. But this is the one I thought was the most interesting. What do you think of her?
Yeah, I think I'm always somewhat skeptical. As good as the California males traditionally are, the California females, for whatever reason, feel like they just lack a little bit. Now, you get a Gamine or something that can be this absolute freak, but it feels like they lack them. And I'll say that D'Amato had the filly that ran third in the Oaks. But the biggest problem I have is, I thought she ran really well last time. I think Interstate Daydream's a nice filly. I don't think she's, I guess the bigger question, what would Interstate Daydream be in here?
I mean, bigger than 7-2.
Way bigger than 7-2. And I think the connections. And when I try to figure out, I'm just a value. I can't go bet, 2,500 to win on somebody. That's not the way that I budget for the weekends or whatever. So for me, I just try to find the value and then key around that opinion. So for me, it'll be betting Shahama and exactas and stuff. I'd probably play against Adair Manor. The one thing I do think that you said that's really interesting, you get to this later point in the year and it's really easy to just take all the numbers at face value, but then you really look and you're like, hey, she hasn't run since May. With any sort of improvement, it puts her 94, 95 buyer, which would make her, it would make her 7-2. It would make her a very, obvious contender. I don't love the inside draw. I think the one could go to the lead, and maybe she just does end up getting the perfect trip sitting just off, and she's fast enough to lead. But, I always have a hard time when these horses coming from California and they're running in 4 or 5 horse fields, and then you come to a 9 horse field here. That really is a pretty deep race. I mean, I think you could go 4 or 5 different ways in here, on the win. I mean, even look to the horse to the outside. I don't like betting horses that are coming off of Charlestown races because it's such a unique track with the bull ring, and but that filly ran 100 buyer.
Yeah.
Now what you'd probably say is, hey, her 4 previous buyers were all mid-70s, so that 100's probably not realistic. But the mile and a 16th probably suits. There's a bunch of different, you could make a case even for that horse. It's a wide open race, I think, and I just wanted to try to find a little value.
I like that idea. You mentioned exactas, and you mentioned being a little bit against Secret Oath and Adair Manor. Which are the other horses you'd throw in with Shahama in those exactas?
Yeah, I think Gerrymander cutting back in distance is pretty obvious. I don't think you're going to get 8-1 with Rosario and Chad Brown. And I mean, I'm not going to completely toss Secret Oath, but I think, to me, she just doesn't look faster than everybody else. So she would be the main horse. I would be king the 7 with the 5 and the 6, which are Gerrymander and Secret Oath. And then, I could possibly be even slightly intrigued with the 1 Green Up. Just, she's run really fast in her last start. She likes the track. she has some other races outside of that 100 buyer that are competitive. Third start off a layoff. She beat Interstate J Dream pretty easy last time. Just it was a common horse that shows up in a couple of these horses' PPs. And I don't love the rail draw for her either, but I think she could maybe. I don't know if she's going to float up, but she's just, it's big name connections, but she hasn't been on the main circuit, which maybe you take that as a slight negative for Todd that she's been kind of picked his spots with her. But like she broke her maiden at Gulfstream, and then she won a one other than at Gulfstream pretty easy. Then she just got a break and just come back and just win those races by 8.5. She would be a horse. Her, Secret Oath, and Gerrymander would be the ones I'm playing around.
Makes sense. And you mean you didn't rule out Society either, but you don't think the 9 Society would end up on tickets?
For me, no. I'd be focusing on those 4, the 1, 5, 6, and 7, like in any multis. If I was going to play tries or something, I could have Society, but I think she could take some money. And again, I think when you kind of freak at weird tracks like Charlestown, it's like a horse that runs good on the slop.
Yep.
Is it the slop or is it this? Is it the fact that, hey, she got on the lead in a bull ring, she kind of kicked clear really early on the stretch and then the race was over? I try to just kind of fade those performances a little bit, especially because it was such a huge jump. She's just a huge bounce candidate anyways, but then the fact that her other races just don't seem to match up.
No, it makes sense. Which of these things is not like the other? And the potential Charlestown horse for course, it is so different when you're basically running around a turn.
Yeah, the whole way.
Let's talk about this race number 12, the Pennsylvania Derby Grade 1 action for these 3-year-olds going 1 1/8 miles. This one for me, Philip, has the look of an absolute scramble. I feel like you could tell stories about 6 different runners in here. Who do you think's going to end up in the winner's circle?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a really interesting race from a betting standpoint. I think there's a fair amount of speed in here. You've got We the People, who's fast. You got B-Dog, who's stretching out and it's fast. You've got Cyberknife, who's not going to let anybody get away. If you feet to the fire, I'd probably pick Cyberknife. In general, historically, I don't love horses coming out of the Travers to the Penn Derby. I think it's a little bit short wheelback, especially for like Cyberknife, who's ran in the Haskell and there. But I think he's just made a lot of improvement. I thought his win in the Haskell, he won by a head over Tyba. He was so loaded the whole way down on the inside. It was just like, is he going to get through or not? And then I thought really he ran really well in the Travers last time. He went to the lead, which probably is not his preferred style. Epicenter just at this point is clearly the best 3-year-old in the country. I'm somewhat interested with Skippy Longstocking. I thought last time he showed a little bit more speed to stay closer to the pace, and he just feels like one of those grinding type horses. And I think he's drawn, right outside of the horse I think that could be on the lead, which is B-Dog. We the People probably goes. But I think he could be getting a scenario where he sits just behind those horses, and he took a step forward last time. It was on a sloppy track. But, he did run third in the Belmont. He didn't completely disgrace himself in the Preakness, but he just feels like one of those horses that's getting a little bit better right now. He's had a little bit more time between starts. He would be a horse I'd be using, and I would be using Tyba. I think the horse that I probably would want to be betting against a little bit is Zandon. I saw Nick Tamara was like, hey, we're going to load up as soon as they cut this horse back. And I kind of feel that way, like, maybe 1.8 miles is what he wants, but, really he had no excuse in the Jim Dandy. And given the trip that Epicenter got, I can't really come up with much of an excuse for him in the Travers. I'm actually surprised that Chad is the king of never wheeling anything back on 4 weeks rest. I'm like even a little bit surprised that he came back here. So maybe that's a vote of confidence. And you switch to Rosario, so maybe that's a positive. But I could see him being a horse that takes a bunch of money. And I would just want to be slightly fading him a little bit. Like he feels like one of those horses that does need a cutback. He looks loaded at points in races and just has not done it. And you could go back to the Bluegrass and say, well, how strong of a race was that? He was so miles the best in there. You felt like, man, he could be anything. But I just don't know that, the longer distance, maybe coming back to 1.16 miles, maybe 7/8 at some point in time would be to his benefit, a 1-turn mile probably.
It is interesting that he's here. For a second, I was thinking, oh, is
Yeah.
this his last chance to get a grade 1 routing? Is that why they're doing it? But he already has a grade 1 routing.
Yeah.
Not that. I mean, I don't blame anybody who says in Chad we trust, and if he is 5 or 6 to 1, want to keep him on side.
Yeah.
But I was inclined, like you, to take a little bit of a stand against. We landed on the same horse on top. I really think Cyberknife does look, the more I look, the most interesting horse. I love that he showed that more pace last time, probably not his preferred running style, and still ran a new top figure-wise.
Yeah.
This is a horse who's just like bursting with ability to me at this point. I love the way, when we had Brad Cox on the show earlier in the week, he doesn't like come out and overtly crazy. That's not his style, but he speaks with great confidence about this horse. When I asked him about Breeders' Cup, the first horse that came to his mind was, well, we'll see what Cyberknife gets on this weekend. But it's interesting. You can kind of tell in the back of his mind, he's thinking this could be even a Breeders' Cup classic horse. And in this year, with all the, excitement that's going on in the top of that division, those are the softer reasons to like him. The harder reasons to like him are new, improved speed, still ran super fast last time. And I think he's going to be in a great attacking spot. I'm not sure who exactly is going to make the lead. I like your B-Doc case for making the lead. I could see Taba being ridden more aggressively. I think we know We the People's going to be ridden aggressively. I just think he's going to get a great trip, and he might even be better than what we've seen so far, Cyberknife.
Yeah.
His signature win may be yet to come.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's a horse they've thought a lot of the whole time, and he's just, you go back and watch a lot of his races. He's not the easiest horse to ride. And yeah, like the only concern I would have, right, is that he ran a new top, came back in 4 weeks, ran a new top. He's coming back in 4 weeks now. Is it just a bridge too far? But in my mind, he's very talented. I think Tybud probably got a little bit unlucky in the Haskell. He had to go wide. Cyberknife ended up saving ground. But as loaded as Cyberknife felt, it felt like maybe if he got clear earlier, he would have just kicked 2 or 3 clear. Taiba feels also kind of like a grinder, like he just maintains that strong gallop all the way through the stretch. So, the fact that he was wide was probably a slight disadvantage, but, I don't know that he necessarily could have just absolutely quickened. Cyberknife feels like you hit go and he gets through the hole and can quicken. So to me, he might just have the most upside.
Yeah, I'm not going to be, if I'm playing multis, I'm not going against Taiba. There's a case to be made for him for sure. I thought my one thought on him, why he could improve past Cyberknife maybe, is if you just look at his overall development pattern and think that with the 77 days and since the debacle of the Derby for him, that maybe he was just the littlest bit short. Maybe he's actually in that training program supposed to come on for that run. I know it's 60 days, but now he's coming off a good effort in 60 days. I mean, look, he's just going to be such a favorite, and I just don't fully trust him for as little as we've seen him on the track. He'd be my backup though. That's how I'd try to get away with it in horizontals in the Pennsylvania Derby. Any closing thoughts from you, Philip, before we close this segment of the show?
No, I think that, again, just I love weekends like this at these smaller tracks. They've poured so much money. I mean, you look at a lot of the races, $200,000 purses, but it's really created a niche, and there are a bunch of great races. So, not just looking at, I would definitely encourage people to look at the plus content, because I mean, it's a great card all the way through, and it's just fun. Like, it's great to have these big weekends at Saratoga, but you kind of get, the Haskell has created this big weekend, and you got the Molly Pitcher and some of these other races. You got the Turf Monster and just all the, the Gallant Bob, and what's really cool to me is it's like the last 3-year-olds races. You got the Gallant, the 3-year-old sprint race, the filly race, the colt race. And I think it's a lot of fun, and they're great betting races. And traditionally they normally are always great betting races. I mean, and they're very competitive. I remember we won the Cotillion with Street Band, and I think we beat 4 grade 1 winners in there, including the Oaks winner and the 2-year-old champion. And it's, it's like, it's hard. I mean, even at Saratoga, the quality at the top was great, but from a gambling perspective, a lot of those races weren't great betting races. Again, the way I bet, they're not. Yeah. I would have said Del Mar was a way better gambling product for the way I gamble. Now, for people that are just going to go hammer somebody that they have a strong opinion on, maybe Saratoga was great, and from a fan perspective, it was great to see all those big matchups. But I think cards like this are really fun. This is where in general, it can be feast or famine, but I have my most success in full fields where I have an opinion and I can leverage that opinion into a multi or a big exacta or something like that. So these are the cards I really love sinking my teeth into from a wagering perspective. So I'm really excited for Saturday.
We'll see how it works. We're going to have Andrew Radzinski and I will be doing a little audio pod covering stakes races. And I believe Jessica Paquette, who's going to be on the simulcast feed for the day, is going to be doing some written content for us. So a lot of stuff going to be cooking in themoneypodcast.com/plus. Philip, we look forward to checking in with you soon.
Yep. Thanks, Pete. I appreciate it. Good luck to everybody this weekend.
Put it out. You probably want to check this out. We got one standard room at the Griffin Gate Marriott Resort and Spa for 3 nights, checking in November 3rd, checking out November 6th. The Griffin Gate Marriott is one of the designated Breeders' Cup hotels, completely sold out. Rooms, retail value, theoretically, about $1,500 per night. We've added a bunch of other fun TRF and Breeders' Cup goodies, including swag, a tour of one of the Kentucky farms, and 4 tickets to the TRF Breeders' Cup party on November 4th, which is happening right there at the Griffin Gate. I'll be there. Here's the link with all the details, including the eBay auction, in themoneypodcast.com/TRFBC. So if you want to get a crack at this room, in themoneypodcast.com/TRFBC, you know it's for a great cause. Tell your friends, get involved. In themoneypodcast.com/TRFBC. Next up on the show, we're going to be going over the Belmont at Aqueduct Pick 6 on Saturday, which kicks off in race number 6. As we record this on Thursday, it's rainy here in New York and in Saratoga, but it does look like Friday, Saturday are pretty clear. Hopefully we're going to be on the turf for these races. That's the way I looked at them. And to look at them with me, we bring in a man who we always like to have on to talk all things NYRA. He is also a Race Lens power user and will be helping us look at the sequence through the prism, I won't say lens, of Race Lens. He is Matt Vagvolgyi. Matt, what's going on, man?
Not much. It's good to be back on and good to be talking some races at the Royal Aqueduct. Very happy about that.
Were you as entertained as I was when Royal Aqueduct took on new meaning last weekend when Frankie Dettori did the flying dismount? I mean,
I think it's perfect. I think it's what should have happened, given the name of the meet. I think the only thing that's missing, in my opinion, is I think for talking horses, I think they should have a horse-drawn carriage, bring in Anthony Stabile and Andy Serling. They can wave to the crowd with their top hats. And I think you get Nick Luck to do the intro. He comes in, he does like welcome to talking horses, and you see the horse-drawn carriage come in. I mean, that to me is Royal Aqueduct in a nutshell right there.
Oh my goodness. You're giving me an idea. You know, this horse, it sounds like this horse, I spoke with Brad Cox earlier in the week about him, Looms Boldly, is running.
I heard that. Interesting.
On Thursday. I may have to bring a jug. We'd call it a pitcher. They would call it a jug of Pimm's out there to Royal Aqueduct just for the photo opportunity. I think I may do that. Yeah, that could be fun. All right, but that's not till Thursday. Saturday, we're going to look at this pick 6. It starts with race number 6, 3:45 Eastern, and we kick off with 2-year-old maiden special weights on the grass. We're going 6 furlongs here. Big full field. Who do you like in this one?
I think it's a good race to start things off. I'm going to look at a few horses. I'll start with the number 1 bat flip. And I'll give you a stat that we talked about during Saratoga. And it's kind of funny. I was talking with a buddy of mine about this, and it was very profitable then. Just looking at Pletcher taking horses from the dirt, going first time turf. He seems to be placing these horses perfectly, and the numbers are very good. So again, if you look at it for the year so far, out of 35 tries, he's hitting that 25% with a positive 18% ROI. And that's pretty good. I mean, again, I think he's placing these horses properly. I think it's something that you may not think of, right? Nothing that I think is just not like a Chad Brown, right? Off the dirt to turf. It's just like, okay, he's supposed to be here. Let's bet him. So I think it's an angle that you don't necessarily think of right off top of mind, but has great numbers. And if you look at over the last month, he's sitting at 50% with these horses. So I like that. So that's certainly a horse I want to pay attention to. I think there's more pedigree on the turf here. So that's the one bat flip for Pletcher and Jose Ortiz. First time starter I'll look at, again, for obvious reason, is I believe the 5, Rutherford for Clement and McCarthy aboard. Again, just hitting solid numbers with 2-year-olds. I mean, Clement doing his 2-year-old thing, right? 23% winners, still with a $2.82 ROI. Anything over $2 to me with Clement with these 2-year-olds is significant. So I'll give Rutherford a look, and then also going to look at I believe the 8, Mullinger, is that how you say it, Mullinger? Second time on the turf, I thought ran pretty decent. The last time out, that was a tough maiden race at Saratoga. Routing, going to get this horse going with a sprint. So again, one thing that jumped out too, I want to mention this as a stat as well for Mott. First time blinkers, 36% winners with a 4.12 ROI. I mean, that's pretty damn good. So
how big of a sample is that?
That is out of.
That's a crazy number.
Yeah. Let me give me just a quick second.
Sure.
I'll do the Jonathan Kitchen talk as I can to find this horse and pull it back up again. That is out of, not bad, 26 starters. So I mean, that's not a terrible sample. It's not huge, but again, I think that's something of interest there that I want to take a look at. So again, decent effort, first time out, getting this horse to sprint, and some good numbers with the first time blinkers on with Mott.
Looking at 158 for Matt. I've got a bunch of other numbers to throw in there in addition to 2 of the ones that are the same. I had real trouble narrowing this race down. I think I might use 5, and longtime listeners know how infrequent that is for me. I did put Rutherford on top. Looks super useful. Clement, as you noted, great record with first-time starters. Amazing. With as obvious as that is, if you watch New York racing at all, amazing that the ROIs are as good as they are. And then pedigree, like you mentioned, lone sibling to try turf, won over it, and more than ready, needed the late more than ready, needed no introduction in terms of his ability as a turf sprint sire and also a first out sire. I wanted to have the 4 Nagger Rock in here as well. I thought that was a very useful effort, turf sprinting on debut, and I didn't think that was the easiest trip. So we've got valuable experience, and then the switch to the motion barn. I thought this one might be interesting. Again, we're doing this early, no morning lines, but felt like a horse that could be at least a mid-type price. I don't know. Maybe I'm dead wrong about that. I wanted to mention the 2 Global Surprise. This was another horse that I thought ran well enough on debut, has some grass on the dam side. Cantharos, very well known for getting turf sprinters. I decided to do a little bit of a look, Matt, about Cantharos as a sire, and I was interested. Yeah, he is awesome as a turf sprint sire, like 15%. That would be over the average, which would be, more like 8 to 10. But I thought it was interesting. Dirt sprinting, Cantharos has been even better, 17%. So it's funny. It's not, you don't want to pigeonhole Cantharos as just a turf sprint guy, but he does have good numbers, and Global Surprise made sense to me. Happy Cat, I thought, plenty of pedigree, trainer that wins first out, and the case you made on the 1 bat flip made sense. So I was going to do it 5 and 4 on the A line, backing up with 2, 6, and 1 to get things kicked off as we move to leg B, this starter allowance race going 6 furlongs on the dirt. I thought that the 3 Fast and Furious was potentially loose, in light, figure advantage. Only thing is going to be bet and tough to trust this horse. The form of the last race not working out well, with 5 to come back and no winners yet out of that race, but still a must use. The one I thought might be a little bit of a price that I thought could be interesting is I believe is the 4 Letty. Could get an absolutely perfect trip. If the top one ends up getting harassed on the front end by a runner like Drink the Wind or somebody else, then you're looking at Letty, second time off the layoff, first off the claim for Linda Rice, who's been absolutely crushing it at the meet. And I joked in a group text the other day, Matt, that we'll all be dead, and Linda Rice will still be training winners in New York, waiting for the result of this appeal or whatever it is going on. I've given up paying attention to it. Matt, who's going to win race number 7?
I think you make all great points on Letty. I think this is a very good looking colt. Like you said, second off the layoff with Linda Rice. I did a lot to like there. I think the horse will get a lot of attention. Just like you mentioned with Fast and Furious on the front end. I do project this horse to get the lead. And just to revisit, a track profile stat that we talked about, bringing in the Royal Aqueduct meet, to look at specific distances, and this being 6 furlongs on the dirt with looking back. So looking back at races that were horses on the lead at first call, and then today projected to be on the lead. Decent sample, 38 starts, 32% winners with a 66% ROI. So that's telling me that's carrying over to this meet as well. Where when we talked about it, it was weird. It was in the beginning of the last meet at Saratoga at Aqueduct, was more of off the pace, pretty much everything from dirt routes to dirt sprints. And then you saw midway, it started to change. I think that trend is still continuing. So I think Fast and Furious is certainly dangerous in this race as well. One horse I wanted to mention that you didn't talk about is looking at what would it be? The number 6, Cathedral Beach. Just nice back-to-back wins. I think this horse is going in the right direction in terms of figures. I just think should get a similar stalking position. Worried a little bit about Fast and Furious may have some company up front. I think his natural speed is probably good enough to get a clear lead. But just in case, I just think Cathedral Beach gets a nice stalking position here. Similar company of those last 2 wins at Saratoga. So that's certainly a horse I wanted to use as well. So I'm going to go 6-3 on the A line, and I'm going to back up with the 4 Letty that you mentioned as well.
All right, good stuff. Let's talk about the next race in the sequence, race 8. We've got a first level allowance going a mile and a 16th on the turf. Matt, we'll keep it with you.
So I'm going to start with, I'm going to go with the number, let's see, where did I go here? Number 3, Celestial City. Listen, I think you look at it 2 ways, right? This horse just doesn't like, it doesn't like to get this colt doesn't like to get his picture taken as of recent, but I just think it's been really knocking on the door. And those have been very good races. And then you look at the relative competition today, I think, dead heating, last time out there, just nice efforts in graded stakes company, I think finds a little bit of a softer group. I think is going to be tough today. It's a horse I do really like in race number 8. I'll also take a look at the, let's see here. And we're using we're not using any PPs.
The perils of the Thursday record. The perils of the Thursday record. Yeah.
I like transactional as well. Second time out for Chad and Manny. That was a great effort at Saratoga. Sat right off the pace and got the job done by half length. Comes back in a decent amount of time. Not a big layoff there. So, and I think with Manny aboard, you're going to have this horse forwardly placed. So I do like that horse. Up on the lead. So I do project the 4 to get the lead. And again, give you another stat there as well. Looking at turf routes, same as we did as with the dirt sprints, to kind of revisit those angles we talked about before the meet. Projected on the lead with these turf routes, 29% winners and 122% ROI. So stealing some nice money on the front end. So I think this horse is going to have some speed. I think we'll get to the lead, but I'm going to go with 2 horses here, Pete, the 3 and 4 in race number 8.
We're in lockstep this time around. I just flipped the order. Transactional. The other note I had was this was a horse that was acting up pre-race. I think even might have dumped the jock briefly in the post parade last time. Still won easily, has worked well since. Just looks like a runner who's poised to move up. But I'm not going to ignore the class of Celestial City. Back at the condition, another one that looks like should be able to move forward in this spot. I was going to put on a backup line the 8 Al's Rocket, who I thought has shown pretty good finish the last 2 days. And I thought had meaningful trouble last time having to wait for run. I thought Al's Rocket, we'll see how Al's Rocket classes up with Transactional and Celestial City, but I thought it was an interesting runner to at least include on some tickets in this spot. Let's talk about our 9th race. We've got New York bred allowance types going a mile on the dirt, pace projected as fast by Timeform US. Do you agree with that assessment? And who's your idea of the winner, Matt?
Yeah, I do think there's going to be a quick pace here. And I think it sets up nicely for the horse I like. Probably going to get a lot of attention and take a lot of money, but this is going to be my single in the sequence. Is going to be the 7 Key Points for Manny and Chad. Now, again, when you look at this horse, debuted 2-1, next race off a layoff, even money, 2-5, 3-5, 2 for 4, right? Again, you'd expect that horse to be
higher confidence. Though I did note that the 2 non-wins, they weren't bad races, but the 2 non-wins were both in the mud. I was wondering if that was maybe something.
Correct. So you got to dig a little bit deeper, and that first line is obviously looking at surface, right? Surface, that's the biggest thing. So difference from, early 20s, Matt, I look at that and say, nope, I'm beating this horse. I'm not even going to look at anything else. Where for me, I look at it and say, okay, I want to beat this horse. And then exactly what you said, surface difference. And I think those losses were very difficult races. And I just think this horse finds the softest spot, other than that, the first start at Saratoga, I think finds the right group, the right pace as well. I think we'll get a hot pace up front. We'll sit probably either third or fourth off the lead and be very much in contention coming into the stretch. So that's going to be my single here. I'm going to try to lean on the number 7 Key Point to get it done at probably a short-ish price, but I think is best in the race. And I think finds the right group.
We feel exactly the same. I didn't fully trust based on the idea of beating at evens, beating at 3 to 5, but the more I look, the more I like, just because I think you can conjure excuses, the very wide, the last day, both those races that weren't wins were in mud, trickier groups, potentially second off the layoff here with big races to run back to and a good trip expected. I was going to keep it simple and single the 7 as well. Hopefully we'll get Key Point in for the hopes of our pick 6 that we're talking about here at Belmont at the Big A. Let's move on to sort of the co-feature. There's a graded stake earlier in the card, the Athenia, but this is the Ashley T. Cole Stakes, New York Breds, going 1 mile and an eighth on the turf. And I thought it might be as simple as City Man in this spot. The 5 runner did not break great last time, didn't really have an excuse, just found one better. Back in 19 days, I think will be very sharp. Looks like the fastest, classiest horse, a legitimate grade 3 horse versus open in back against New York Breds. Not good the last time against New York Breds. It's not like the horse is nailed on, but I thought there were trip excuses that day. You wonder about the distance a little, or I wondered about the distance a little bit. Hasn't won at 9 furlongs, but you go back and you look, and one of the best races was at 9 furlongs. I don't think that's a problem. I wouldn't hate having a backup or two here, but I thought City Man was the most likely winner and was the only one I had in my notes to talk about. Tell me how you see the Ashley T. Cole.
Yeah, I think City Man is without question the horse to beat here. I think just finds a much softer spot today. I think the 19 days coming back is horses in great form, finding a great spot to get this horse back into it. Felt that it was a good run the last time, maybe a little bit disappointing. Let's get this horse back out there and get a win. And I just think Clement found a great spot and is willing to put this horse back in on short rest. I think much to beat, much the best here. I think a really, really soft spot. I think should just be sitting right off the pace and should be able to get this done. I will mention just another horse that I am going to include on a backup that I think is a little bit interesting is Jerry the Nipper. Just a ton of races on the dirt, does have one turf race, and it was a win. Now it was different company than today, of course, but they tried to get this horse on the turf at Saratoga, got washed off, stayed in the race, ran in the mud, ran okay, faded late. But I like getting this horse back on the turf. I just really want to see this horse compete at a high level and improve for Pletcher. So that was the other one I want to include. And I don't know, maybe get a little price with the expectation that City Man takes a ton of money in this stake here in race number 10.
I love that case, and I'm convinced that that's the right backup, with the idea that if City Man loses, he's probably going to lose from a horse that maybe gets loose and is hard to peg back. That's the trip that I'm thinking Jerry the Nipper is going to probably get. I might also play one backup line with Sanctuary City just on the angle of that this is a horse that has finished in front of City Man in the past and should be a multiple of that one's price. I mean, I'm going to put half the money in that I put in this race is going to go through the A. It's a strong A, but I will back up a little bit with the 2 and the 6. Let's move on to our nightcap, race number 11. Classic nightcap, Saratoga, Belmont, Aqueduct, Belmont at Aqueduct, nightcap stuff. We've got the 3 and up New York bred filly and mare, maiden claimer, 40s, going 1 mile and a 16th on the turf. Matt, how are we going to get paid?
Man, this is a headache, this one. I won't talk anyone off any horse they like here. So I'll go through a few, just trying to draw on some things that, horses trying maybe something different, or for, like this horse, looking at the 2 Frosty Invasion, just getting back on the turf again, got caught in what I thought to be a pretty hot pace duel. faded badly. Get this horse back on the turf again. I think in a similar spot. Those were straight maidens. That was a tough race, that turf race back at Belmont in May. So again, I think stretching out a little bit here, I think would be good for this horse as well. So thought Frosty Invasion was interesting. Jenny May also, I thought too, just very similar to last race, just with a horse getting loose. I think that could be the case here. I think Jenny May can get out front. Who knows? Just a bad field where horses may not want to pass each other. This horse might go gate to wire and steal down the front end. Also wanted to look as Oak Loves a Fight, which I believe is the 9. Yeah. I just feel like Noda hasn't won in a million years, which isn't true. It's gotten a little bit better as of late in the last 30 days. But I just think this horse is getting better, has competed very well, especially in the last 2 races. I thought those were very good races. A horse that's going to be sitting off of it. So again, if closers are doing well on the day, that's certainly a horse you want to include. It does have my best late pace figure, and also laying close to the pace, which I do like. So it doesn't have to make up a ton of lengths to get it done, and pretty good spread difference between the others in terms of late pace figure. So certainly want to look at Oak Loves a Fight. Who else here? And then I give a shout out to Kukuro. Is that how you say it? The 8 try and turf for the first time, and that's pretty much all I got. Didn't do much on the dirt. Those were pretty tough races. I felt this horse was in on the dirt. Given this, I think this filly has a shot here getting on the turf for the first time. So there's some pedigree there as well. So a light use there on the 8, but I just figured something different in a field that's very confusing. So I would say 2, 3 on the A lines, and I will back up with the 9 and the 8. Also, too, I think you can mention that the 10 ace upper sleeve, second time on the turf. But in terms of A's and B's here, 2, 3 is A's and 8 and 9 is B's.
Looking for some strangers, it makes a lot of sense in a race like this. Noda did win one the other day. Dust Devil got a win.
It's one of those things where it's like in my head from like Saratoga. It's I almost just rode off his horses pretty much every day towards the end of the meet. But you're right, I have seen him pick it up a little bit in the last month. So
it can change in a hurry, and he's so freaky that you look for signs that it's going to turn around. And he's
and to be fair, I think it's just running into the wrong fields too. I think that's a big thing to look at when trainers are cold. And it's funny, Sean Bourne and I were talking about this the other day of like, not just relying on the stats of a trainer when they're cold. There could be a lot more into that. Could be just flow of the barn. It could be competition, just falling in the wrong spots. And then all of a sudden, it's like overnight, they snap back into it. And that can, like you said, that can change very quickly. So I totally agree. I think it'd be a little harsh on Noda. I think he could change very quickly with his stats.
I'll date myself here because the game has changed so much at this point I'm about to make isn't particularly relevant. But back in the old days, like 90s, when Saratoga really held itself to a higher standard of racing than the other New York tracks. These days, it's just all about full fields and handle, and that makes sense. It's what horse players want. It's what makes money for the horseman. This isn't get off my lawn, but it just was what it was. You had a lot more allowance races, a lot fewer claiming races, and there'd be New York claiming guys who would go 0 for or 1 for a lot at Saratoga. I think of Gasper Moschera, a name probably before your time, Matt, in the game. And he'd, have a 1 for Saratoga or an 0 for Saratoga, and then get back to Belmont where they're riding the races where his horses are more suited for, and go on to, like, I feel like every fall, at least there for a few years in the 90s when I was getting in the game, just go on an absolute tear. And it's different here with Noda because obviously they are, in theory, running races where these horses should be competitive, but whatever. There are vagaries that you want to pay attention to. And I don't think you want to hold the last meet stats against a trainer like this. That said, this isn't a horse that I came up with. I get it, but it just looked like, just looked like another horse in this absolute tricky race. One I'll mention you didn't mention, who I think is fairly likely to get in off the AEs, number 11, Latest Edition. I thought was interesting. I had a note held up briefly for room last time, and that was also a day when closers did really well. Looking at the Jake Jacobs Racing Flow data, it was heavily tilted towards closers. So I think this was a case of a runner. She just made the lead too fast on a day when races were flowing like that. I think she'd be a strong A for me if she gets in. I also had notes on the 2 and the 3 that you mentioned. I don't have anything in particular to add. It's sometimes these dirt horses getting back onto the turf, and people are going to look, oh, she can't stand up on turf. Well, that was against straight maidens. That's a very different deal. And then the pace angle with Janny May, the 3 at this level. I want the horse who I think is going to be on the lead at the pace call every single time. So I'm going to play it with, I'll list the 11 on top of my picks with the 2, 3 as backups, but I'm with you. I'm not going to talk off anybody in here, a rare race where, that the all makes sense. And certainly I would imagine with your ticket construction, and I want to do a show with you soon all about ticket construction, by the way, but a graded all, do you think might be in your future in this race?
Yeah. I mean, I have that noted as, an all question mark, and that's what I mean, right? I'm not just going to push the all button, which again, I'm not saying it's like the devil and you should never do it. I just think there's more efficient ways to do that. And that's the way I've learned. That's why when I say graded all, that's the reason, right? And a lot of times with the graded all, I'm looking at more of what I'm projecting the tote board to be, not necessarily what I feel are my best horses, because if you're using it all, you just got to admit to yourself, you don't know what the hell is going to happen, right? You don't have an opinion, right? So I just try to take my ego out of it and say, what are my projected pari-mutuels to have the leverage on the lower paying horses versus the mid-range and then the long range, and try to build it like that. But I certainly would look to try to build in, especially with a strong single, building in a graded all. You'd be surprised, even if this thing is, mid price, short price, getting into this last leg, and a bomb shows up out of nowhere. I mean, that's what really can blow the pick six up. So I don't want to be left out. So yeah, I think there will be some plays with graded alls on there as well, Pete. It just makes sense in terms of what I expect the multiples to be in this race of I would say probably a high priced favorite going off here. So I think using as many as you can would make sense.
All right, good stuff, Matt. Always enjoy talking with you and going on some tangents with you. Folks interested in learning more about RaceLens can check out the product inthemoneypodcast.com/RaceLens. Will bring you to the page. The code is in the money for new subscribers. You get the first month for $1. And then if you're returning or recurring subscriber, in the money 40 will get you a significant discount. So we want folks to check that stuff out. Matt, we will be talking soon.
See you, Pete.
Next up in the show, happy to welcome in our Woodbine guy to talk about all things Woodbine. We'll probably start with a quick look back at last weekend, which I did in depth with Nick Tamaro on the early week show. And then we're going to talk about the last 4 races on the card on Saturday from inthemoneypodcast.com. Here's Drew Coatney. Drew, what's up?
Hey, I'm doing good. How are you today?
How did that opposing Appleby plan work last weekend?
Oh, it was terrible. Oh my gosh, it was terrible. It was not a great idea. And sometimes contrarian views are beneficial and can pay off. But at the same time, you got to balance some logic here of like who really are these horses that are showing up, and they really did put it on display that they are several lengths better than the competition that we saw. Whereas we thought maybe we could eke out a neck here or there, but not the case. It was full blown.
These are horses that are going to look to have a major impact come Breeders' Cup time, especially Modern Games with that Tour de Force 112. Mystery Night, that was a big figure. Mysterious Night, big figure as well. Of course, it was Last Call, the one who undid me. I whined about this on the early week show, but I'll whine about it once more to you, Drew. I would have had the second or the third one, the Natalma. I would have had the 20-cent pick 5 125 times. Had a nice $25 line going through. But yeah, not meant to be. Last Call had other ideas. So that's life in the big city. Let's dive ahead, my friend, to these races on this Saturday card. That line, the let's dive ahead. That'd be where to make the edit if we have to, that we probably won't have to, and people will be listening to this, but then they get an idea of how the sausage is made, which I think our fans like. Anyway, race number 7, 2-year-old maiden fillies, 5.5 on the synthetic, field of 11 going postward here as we kick off this sequence that does have a late pick 4 involved, but around here we very often gravitate towards that low takeout in the rolling doubles. What numbers are going to be on your tickets, Drew Coatney?
Yeah, so I had handicapped this before numbers, so bear with us here as we go through them. But I think I'm going to the 2 firsters here, Miss Jezel and Campaign Krista. So that would be
9 and 10. I've got them. Yeah, 9 and 10. And Champagne, I believe, not Campaign, right?
Champagne Krista. That's correct. I think with Miss Jezel, the Ghost Zapper filly starting for Josie Carroll, first time out, firing at 23%. And the strong recent gate work looks good. And then the number 10, Champagne Krista at 12-1. This American Pharoah filly comes for Catherine Day Phillips, another great first-time starter trainer at 20%. Hasn't yet to show it in the morning, but gets the benefit of the bug jockey who's been riding great there. So those two will be on the tickets. And then I am against the short price favorite with the number 11 Acquired Taste. I just didn't like what I saw visually, and I don't know if we're going to see this one really step up too much. So I'm going to go with two firsters. Don't have a strong read on this, if you can tell. Really open bunch in a wide open event here to kick things off.
It's an open race, in my opinion, reflects that. I can't rule out the favorite, but I didn't really want in a race where I thought there were some interesting firsters. I had Champagne Krista on tickets. I'll get to her in a minute. But I'll start off with number 2. Oh, wow. A pedigree I'm intrigued by. I like Temple City as a sire. This dam has dropped a couple of winners, including Artie, who won first out with an 89 Beyer speed figure. And the workouts, 2 and 3 back. We don't have a clocker report here. We'll see if Ernie Perry has anything to say over at woodbine.com in a day or two as we record this on Thursday. But just looking at the tab, there's no way those aren't, pretty rock solid works for the level for this 2-year-old filly. 2 oh wow on top. And then really cool breeding on the 10 as well. You mentioned American Pharoah. We got a Dubawi mare. You mentioned about the Dave Phillips firster stats. That's great. She and Slade Jones have teamed up for a couple of winners. And I think it's a sign of intent. When a homebred from Catherine Day Phillips shows up with a hot riding apprentice, it feels like a sign of intent that this isn't a homebred who they're going to necessarily, just give a race to. You'd figure they'd reach out to a journeyman for that situation. This feels like we have a real chance to win. I think this horse is going to be a price, and I'm very, very interested. Slade Jones, by the way, really, obviously I'd watched ride a lot, but was really impressed seeing in the flesh up there, put on a real show using his skills and his weight break, especially around the inner turf course. I feel like I'm going to upgrade Slade Jones horses on the inner turf for the foreseeable future. And Slade Jones, enjoy this fine work he's doing, Drew, while we can, because this 16-year-old kid looks to be about 6 feet tall. So hopefully he can keep going and not have to, struggle with weight in the near future, because I've been really impressed with what I've seen, as I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't know 16. Oh, my goodness. If I look back at 16-year-old pictures of myself, I'm about 120 pounds and would make weight. And now, as my nephew, 8-year-old nephew, said, I'm quote unquote jacked. But really, I think what he means is rotund and round.
One man's jacked is another man's rotund and round. Let's talk about race number 8. We got a 2-year-old Ontario sired stakes going 7 furlongs on the turf. And that was the angle I used to make my pick in this spot, Drew, with number 4. And again, I pick this horse every time, and as an American hockey fan, I have to relive sad memories. But Poulon in OT, I just thought worth another try, because that last stakes race, that was an open stake. And now getting back to Ontario sired, it's just an easier group. And he'd been very good before that, has a bit of an experience edge. I thought also that I wanted to take a little bit of a shot, just race design wise, with the number 3, Have to Reload. This horse has a natural running style that I think might suit this test. The 2 races has broken really sharply, but then settled really well and come running. There's plenty of pace here, and that might work out well for Have to Reload. Not immediate great turf blood, but plenty of turf influences on both sides of the pedigree. I'm going to play this one 4-3. How do you see it?
Yeah, I love the number 4 as well here. Cold single for me. I think the last out, I have a note, even though time form figures don't indicate it, there was a bit of a pace collapse up front. So that indicates to me that just hanging in too deep of waters today should be a bit better to make one run late, press, and hopefully we'll see that PP running line from 2 back with glided to the lead at the 3/8. So the number 4, Puyin and OT for me as a cold single in this event.
you make an excellent point. That was absolutely a pace collapse. And just because the fractions, and this is very important in turf races, other things come into play with ground conditions and wind and other things that the pace figures don't always account for it. And sometimes it just makes sense to do the oldest trick in the book, and you just click in the charts. And when you click in the charts of this run, you see that the horses who were 1, 2, 3 early were last, third to last, and fourth to last. And meanwhile, the horses that were 5th, 7th, and 8th early ended up 1, 2, 3. And that kind of old school chart form analysis is something that you can do to make upgrades for horses. And I think you make a great case. And I feel even better about Poulin and OT after you make that observation, which I honestly wasn't even really paying attention to when I had already made the pick. So I think that is an interesting one. And I'm definitely still going to want to have to reload on side. But I do believe that Poulin and OT going to get some pressing there from me in the featured race number 8.
And second point on that too, two of the horses coming out of that race where the pace collapse was, Philip, my dear, faced Mysterious Night last week as well, just to show the test that this runner was up against here.
So it was a better race. It was definitely a different deal, and probably what I would call it's like a soft flow upgrade. Maybe the numbers don't say it, but just the way that race played out, I'm comfortable. I just know that horse is better than that. Let's see how it turns out on Saturday. Race number 9, we've got 3-year-old and up filly and mare maiden special weights going 1 mile and a 16th on the synthetic surface. And Drew, we'll keep it with you.
Yeah, the number 4, Doodah. What a fun name. 5-2 morning line. Top choice for me. Comes out of maiden optional claimer at 40,000 event. So staying at the level today. And I think that race was pretty darn strong with Devil's Bit coming back and running a number in the 70s in a stakes event a couple weeks ago. And so I just think this group, again, is a little easier and doesn't look to be a lot of pace pressure in here. So might be able to get away with the lead like we saw on debut. And I think could really step forward here for us. So the number 4, Doodah, 5-2 with a speed and back class play. But I'll also use just a little bit, nothing terribly insightful here. We're just trying to survive and get through. The number 6, Intro, at 2-1. If things do heat up a little bit too much and Doodah can't hang on to the lead, number 6, Intro, looks to be absolutely the closer in this event that has the best figures. Back class is in the mid 60s, hasn't been able to produce anything since last year like that, but I think showed an improvement in form on the turf in the last 3 events. Today gets back over to the all weather. I think it's all systems go. Hopefully number 6, Intro, could pick up the pieces. So a little Doodah and a little Intro, and we're on our way.
You and I see this one the same way. I just have the numbers in the opposite order. I put Intro on top, looking very obvious, racing in a maiden claimer on synthetic for the first time. This is another horse who was against the flow last time. Guessing was going to be closer to early proceedings here and getting back to the synth where the high speed figure came. I like Intro quite a bit in the spot. And you made a great case for Doodah, and I do think there's a potential pace angle there. Maybe not leading, but sitting very close and getting back onto what also may be the preferred surface. So, yeah, same playbook in race number 9, which brings us to our nightcap, race number 10, starter allowance for 3-year-old and up fillies and mares going 1 mile on the inner turf. How are we going to get paid?
Yeah, and really a lot of this comes from Ron Gearking's reporting that we can find in DRF Formulator. He reported the number 4 Il Malocchio bled 3 back, was not on Lasix and has been on Lasix the last 2 outings and was overmatched a bit in both of those, but earning good figures. I'm expecting this horse to sit and pounce and just get the win for the N3L level. And I think the connections are just trying to make a little bit of profit here and finding the soft spot. So the number 4, Il Malocchio at 5-2 seems like an old favorite of our podcast, but also I think is a good play in this event. And then 2 other horses to use. Number 5, Systematic, 5-1 installed on the morning line. I think will be the co-favorite, but we'll be pressing the pace and play second here because I just don't think the full mile is going to suit this runner. as well as the number 4 Il Malocchio, but I think has a chance to get it done. So the number 5 Systematic. And then lastly, a bit of a long shot use of backup is the number 8 Talk to You Later at 6-1. Would like to see that price a little higher, and is an up and coming type who failed to run off the layoff against our top choice today, and then comes into the event with a stronger back class figure, and Emma Jane stays aboard. So that's kind of like who knows where the ceiling is for Talk to You Later. And at 8-1, I think we'll be around 8-1. I don't want to get beat by that horse.
Fair enough. I had Il Malocchio on top too. As much as we disagreed last week, we're agreeing this week. Disappointed the last turf try, but that's a great note from Ron Gearkink, who does an amazing job in the pages of Daily Racing Form, and you can read him there or through Formulator. Also, great info on the Monmouth Park website and also the simulcast feed. Jeff Bratt does such a good job on there. No shortage of excellent info available. Woodbine.com, a place you definitely should be looking. But I thought Il Malocchio might be better from coming off the pace, and I thought we'd just get a terrific setup in this spot. I also wanted to mention the 11, Lady Moonshine, brings a 2-race win streak into this, has a good late kick. And again, the race should be run to suit. I was going to try to get out 4-11. I'll take another long look at your 5 and your 8 in here, including that runner. Talk to you later. And Drew, I will talk to you later, because this episode is just about done.
Thank you. Yeah, awesome. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you, my friend. That's it for this edition of the show. Peter Thomas Fornatown here. Very, very happy to be with you through these segments. Want to thank all of today's guests and all of today's sponsors. But most of all, want to thank all of you for listening and viewing and making these shows so much fun to do. We've got a ton of good stuff coming up. We're getting to that magic time of year where pretty soon you can sign up for our Plus service and you'll get all this extra Keeneland and Santa Anita coverage, plus the Breeders' Cup package for just $15. It's a pretty darn good deal, very competitive with other things out there. And we know people are happy. They come back year after year. InTheMoneyPodcast.com/plus if you want to learn more about that. This show's been a production of In the Money Media. Our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kinchin. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatown. May you win all your photos.
Just me.